off, it eventually rots the teeth. The teeth might even look fine, but inside they're rotting. And I think of a relationship exactly the same way. It's like you have these fights, and most people, they just sort of don't talk to each other for a couple days, and then they brush it under the rug. That's leaving that plaque there.
As a man, you can practice unconditional love in a relationship, and it is the upper echelon of consciousness that a man should try to achieve in a relationship. Should love be conditional, or should we have a striving towards an unconditional love in a relationship?
I think you can love them and be like, this person's hurting, they're going through something.
Right.
I love them, but I can't be with them in the same way.
I agree with unconditional love statement, but if love is these behavioral markers that we do, like giving our time or our resources or stuff like that, and that's like an act of love, then I think we should have conditional love.
For a point where I'm sick of Nicole and I just need some space, or she's sick of me and just need, we're just, every moment that we can spend together, we do, doing whatever we can together. So it's not, I think that most people wouldn't believe it, right?
Yeah.
Because it just sounds, too phenomenal. And, we don't really argue. I mean, not to say that we haven't ever had arguments, but I mean, 99% of the time we just get along and have a great time and enjoy each other's company. And, but I think though, one of the reasons for it is because, and this is something that I did learn and that we do practice, and fortunately for me, Nicole is wonderful at this as well, is we resolve all issues completely, right? So I always think of it as, the reason why you get tooth decay is because plaque builds up on your teeth, right? And if you don't brush them, or you don't go to the dentist, and you don't get that plaque scraped off, it eventually rots the teeth. The teeth might even look fine, but inside they're rotting. And I think of a relationship exactly the same way. It's like you have these fights, and most people, they just sort of don't talk to each other for a couple days, and then they brush it under the rug. That's leaving that plaque there, and it builds up and it builds up. And so if you don't completely resolve the issue and get to a complete resolution, then you build up bitterness, and that bitterness is what ends up killing the relationship over time as you get resentment, and now you no longer like the person you're with.
Yeah, well said. Well said. I'd like to transition. I have a really interesting question and conversation point that I've been debating in my head a lot. There's almost like a civil war in our group right now between these like two factions. It's crazy. And it all stemmed from this post that this guy had about unconditional love. Okay. And he took the position that as a man, you can practice unconditional love in a relationship, and it is the upper echelon of consciousness that a man should try to achieve in a relationship. And I just wanted to know what you guys thought about that. Should love be conditional, or should we have a striving towards an unconditional love in a relationship?
I know how John feels, but actually I've been thinking about this. So I'm going to go before John.
Okay, go ahead.
Because I think when you're in the relationship and everything, the love should be conditional, or unconditional, I mean. However, because I've seen people be like, well, what if they cheat and you leave them? That's not unconditional. And see, that's where I'm like, you can still have the boundary, but people would say that's a condition. So it's like, I don't think you should tolerate certain things like that, or like abuse or things like that. Like, I don't think you have to deal with that to prove that you have unconditional love. You can still love that person and leave them, which I think is the unconditional love part of it.
Right.
But I think that doesn't necessarily mean like if cheating is a deal breaker or they abuse you or anything like that, that means that you have to stay with them because of unconditional love. I think you can love them and be like, this person's hurting, they're going through something.
Right.
I love them, but I can't be with them in the same way. So that is kind of my perspective that I've been thinking on, because I've seen other people having this discussion online too. And it's like, because when you think about it, you're like, okay, that is a condition. But if you're still loving them, but from afar, it's like you're not technically breaking that love. You just have to kind of change the situation. That's my opinion on it.
Yeah, I agree. I'm of the same mind on that too, because I think that the idea of unconditional love, well, I mean, if you take it to the most extreme level, right? Because you have unconditional love and unconditional respect, right? And the unconditional love, it's sort of the highest that you can be as a human being, to have unconditional love for everyone, for everything. Like that's what we really would aspire to not have any hate in our hearts, to just love everyone. But again, that doesn't mean that you're allowing yourself to be walked on. It doesn't mean that you're tolerating abuse. It doesn't mean that you don't have boundaries, because you can love someone, shoot, and you can still not necessarily be with them. That might not be the best thing. Just like, I have some family members that had alcohol problems or drug problems, right? And I love them, but there's times where I'm not going to associate with them, and I'm not going to give them money. You know what I mean? I still love them, but in fact, that is my way of loving them, because enabling them doesn't love them. And the same thing, I think, when you're in an abusive relationship. And I'd say the same exact thing applies to respect, because on the flip side, people always say, when we talk about unconditional love and men value unconditional respect, it's like, oh, well, respect has to be earned. Well, no, I disagree with that. Respect has to be earned. I believe that I have respect for every single human being on this planet, whether they deserve it or not, whether they show me respect or not. That doesn't influence how I behave. Now, if someone's disrespectful to me, I'm probably not going to have them in my life. I'm probably not going to be around them or give them my attention or access to me. But I'm still going to treat them respectfully and still respect them as a human being, because that is about me. It's not about them. And I think you can apply the love and the respect to that exact same principles. It's like, you unconditionally love as best as you can because of who you are, not because of who they are.
Yeah, I guess before you chime in here, Tom, I guess we have to define what love is, because if you're talking just like an overall disposition towards humanity, like I care about these people, I want their best interests, I agree with unconditional love statement. But if love is these behavioral markers that we do with like giving our time or our resources or stuff like that, and that's like an act of love, then I think we should have conditional love, right? And so I think we have to like play with the definitions here first before we kind of decide what if it's something we should actually do. Because to me, when I hear that, it's like Nicole, I do hear like, oh, you should like let's give an example here to get granular, right? Like, let's say the wife is cheating on the husband with another man, and that goes against his boundaries. Loyalty is a value he has. He feels that he's being screwed over, but at the same time, he's gonna like, I'm still gonna do these things for her, these favors. I'm going to clean the house. I'm gonna do all these things for her, and because I want to do it because I love her, but she's still crossing my boundaries. Is that an act of unconditional love, or is he being walked all over?
See, I agree with you that I think that each person kind of has their condition when it comes to it, because some people, they would stay with a partner that's cheated, but I personally, I would not. Like, I love John. If he somehow cheated on me, which I don't think would ever happen, I would have to be like, I love you. I'm upset that we can't be together anymore, but that's like a big deal to me. So I would still love him. I wouldn't like hate him. I wouldn't automatically like dislike him. I'd be upset by his decision, but I would have to draw that line there and be like, you've crossed the line that I can't go back from. Like, even if he did the laundry and everything for the rest of our lives, it just would not fill that space for me.
Right.
So it is complicated, because it's like, I mean, but if the guy whose wife is cheated, if he's like able to work on that with her and figure those things out, I don't think that's necessarily wrong either, because maybe he is able to work through that with her and not see it as a like detrimental thing to their relationship. But I think that it's different for everybody, because I know people who have had like infidelity in their marriage and things like that, and they're still together and they worked through it, and more power to them, because that's harder, honestly, than just being like, okay, we can't do this anymore. So I think everybody has certain lines, and the cheating one I feel like is blurry because people can be one way or another on it. But things with like abuse or things like that, that's where it would be really hard, because you love that person and they're hurting you, but you still love them, but you can't continue to go about this way. So I think the like abuse, emotional, physical, that is where I guess that I would say it's conditional. Like,
well, I would even say that that's not conditional, in the sense that you are, if how I would define love is, I would define it as choosing what's in the best interest of another person. That's how I would define love, right? As kind of a broad definition. And
John, who determines that? The person or you?
well, it has to be you, because you're the one doing the loving, right? Because you have to make that judgment call, right?
Because sometimes some people are like, well, that I'm doing what's in the best interest of her, but maybe she doesn't want that. Like some guys will dilute themselves. It's the best interest of us to stay married for the kids too, and for her, she's just being crazy right now. In her mind, she thinks the best interest is to leave. You see what I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
And I get that. I mean, you're still going to have to make some kind of a judgment call on that. But in the situation of the cheater or the abuser, staying with them and cleaning the house and just being walked over is not a loving response, because that's not in their best interest. That doesn't help them in their life. So that's why I think it's very situational, right? In one person's situation, maybe they do need to leave. Another person's situation, maybe they need to work through it. I think it also depends on where is that other person's heart, the cheater's heart. Are they remorseful? Did they make an honest mistake? What is their history? Where are they at? Where is their heart at this moment? And what is the proper response that is loving in that moment? If they're contrite about it, if they don't care about it, if they're cavalier about it, then doing stuff for them and continuing the relationship does not help them in any way. It's actually harming them and destructive to them. But I mean, it is a difficult thing. It's not like there's a real simple answer. But I think people make it too complicated, because when we say unconditional love, right, it's burning the boats, right? So I always tell Nicole, I love you no matter what you do, no matter what happens, no matter what you say. And I mean that. And part of the reason why I mean that is because before I even got married to her, I know her deeply. So I know that anything that she's capable of doing, I'm capable of loving, right? So now, is it possible that I would be completely surprised and taken off guard? I suppose so, but I'm willing to bet everything on my knowledge of Nicole from what I know about her. So I'm willing to say, I love you unconditionally.